Hey guys, it's Bree. Today I'm going to show you how to make these fabric flowers using the burning method. So without further ado, let's jump right in. Okay, so prior to tracing your stencils, you are going to want to fold your fabric. And you're going to want to fold it over as many times as you think you can get away with that particular type of fabric. It will save you so much time down the road if you cut out as many layers as you can kind of in one sitting. So fold that fabric over, like I said, as many times as it will allow, and you will thank me later. You also want to put your stencils as close together as you can get them, and that way you end up using a lot less fabric, and it also makes the circles easier to cut out when they are really close together. Okay, one thing I cannot stress enough is how important it is to have high quality scissors. When I was doing this for my wedding, I used some cheap scissors I had in the house, and I about pulled my hair out. So you're going to be working with different types of fabric, and it really makes a world of difference when you have high quality fabric scissors. So make sure you have those. Okay, so if you have eyeballs, you can see that these stencils are far from perfect, but that is totally fine. They are going to be burned anyway around the edges, so they don't need to be perfect at all. So I just wanted to mention that so you don't kind of slave over making sure you have perfect circles, because it's not going to matter in the long run anyway. So yeah. Okay, so I added this step for you guys because it is a big time saver. So all we're doing here is stacking the layers according to size. So we're gonna stack all the big 5s together, all the 4.5s together, the 4s and the 3.5s, and stack as many different fabrics together as you can. So I have a nylon and a polyester here, and I'm going to stack those together. So stacking as many layers as you can together will save you a lot of time, but keep in mind we will be cutting through this fabric, so don't stack too many different layers together, just stack as many as you think you can cut through. Okay, so starting with your 5-inch stack, you are going to make 6 equally spaced cuts around the layer. And because this is the 5-inch one, your cuts are going to be about 1 inch in length. And as you go down in size, so when you go to the 4.5, to the 4, and to the 3.5, you want your cuts to be shorter. So with the 3 4.5 inch in diameter circles, I will only cut about 3/4 of an inch in. And I'll do the same with the 4, but the 3.5 inch in diameter one, I'll only cut about a 1/2 inch deep. You want to progressively get smaller and smaller as each layer gets smaller and smaller. So through trial and error, I found that making 6 petals is kind of the sweet spot. Anything less than that or anything more than that just didn't look right to me. But again, these are just my recommendations. So if you want to make more or less petals, these are your flowers and you go right ahead. Okay, so to prepare for the next step, we want to sort the layers to form the flowers. So we're sorting from biggest to smallest, so 5 all the way down to 3.5. Here I am sorting the 5s, and since we have 2 of those, I'm just stacking them there. The next layer is 4.5, and we have 3 rows of that. 1 row of the 4, and the last row 3.5. And you just want to continue putting your flowers together with all the fabric that you have cut out. Okay, so now for the fun part where we actually get to burn the flowers. So I'm starting with an organza type fabric here. You can't see it all that well, and I apologize for that, but in a second I'm going to show you the same technique with a different fabric, so you'll be able to see it better. But all I'm doing is holding the fabric about 1/2 inch to 1 inch above the flame and just going around the perimeter, constantly keeping the fabric moving. And you'll start to see as you go around that the fabric is starting to kind of wilt and curl a little bit. And that is exactly what we want. And if you hold the layer over the flame, hold the center of it over the flame, you'll see it's starting to pucker and kind of pinch in certain areas. And that is giving the layer a more flower-like appearance. So I'm just continuing to go around the perimeter of the layer here so you can kind of start to get an idea of how it reacts to the flame. And after I go around the perimeter, I go down each cut where we cut the petals. And if you hold your layer over the flame like I'm doing here, you'll see that it starts to pucker and pinch, and that is really making it look like a flower. It's important to note that each layer will do something a little bit different than the layer before. And this is true for fabrics as well. Each fabric will do something different than another kind of fabric. So it's just a matter of getting familiar with each type of fabric that you're using. Some petals want to curl up, some want to curl down, some don't want to do what you want them to do. But that is kind of the beautiful part of this process. Each fabric, each layer does something different. So don't stress too much about your petals not doing exactly what you want. I promise you it will look great in the long run. So here is the organza type fabric that I used, just showing you kind of the final product here when all layers are stacked together. And now we are moving on to the polyester, and this is the one that burns a lot slower. So you'll be able to see it in a little bit more detail here. So again, just going around the fabric, and as you can see, I'm constantly moving. And sometimes it catches on fire. It's not a big deal. To me anyway, it kind of added to the vintagey look, but don't let yours burn if you don't want little burn marks. So here you can see I'm going in between each petal. And the reason I do that is because it kind of puckers, and you can see that here. And that's what gives your flower its life. It makes it look like a flower when it starts to pucker like that. And so this is the next layer, just doing the same thing. You're going to do the same thing with all 7 layers. And as I go from biggest to smallest, I kind of want each layer to pucker a little bit more than the last. And that will help give it its kind of biggest to smallest flower look. You'll see what I mean. You'll see what I mean when it's done. Now with fabric like this, with a polyester blend or a nylon, the fabric may have a shiny side and it may have a dull side. So just make sure throughout the process that your fabric is always facing the same direction. I personally like to have the shiny side up, just because more often than not, the petals, when you're burning them, do curl up. And you do want people to see the shiny side. So here is the final, semi-final product of the white polyester blend that I just did. And I'm going to show you again with another piece of fabric, because like I said, all fabric burns differently. This is a nylon blend, I believe, and this burns a lot faster. I should say melt. It melts a lot faster. I keep saying burn. So I'm doing the same exact thing. No matter what the fabric is, my technique is exactly the same. The only thing that changes is my distance to the flame, depending on how sensitive it is and how quickly I move. The technique is exactly the same. Now, if you're making a lot of flowers like I did, you're going to need a lot of tea lights. You'll start to notice after kind of a few layers or a few flowers, depending on your fabric and how long you're taking, your tea light will still be burning, but it won't be producing as much heat. And when you start to kind of notice it's taking a while, even though it seems like there's a lot of wax left, blow it out and grab a new tea light and it will save you a lot of time, I promise. I kind of learned that the hard way. So nix the tea light when it stops working for you. So this is the final product of the flower that we just created. I only used 5 layers for this one, so you can probably see it's a little bit thinner and flatter. And this purple one here, I'm sorry you can't see it that well, but I used all 7 layers and you can probably tell that it looks a lot fluffier. So I definitely prefer 7 layers. Okay, so all we're going to do here is glue each layer to each other and it's going to create a flower. So you just want to use a very small amount of glue. And what I'm doing here, unclick your pen. You don't want the ink part out, but I'm pushing in with the tip of the pen. So if you use too much glue and you press it down kind of with your thumb, you're going to flatten out your flower and it's going to look like a flat mess. So if you use a little bit of glue and then after you attach the layer, you pinch it around a pen like I'm doing here. You'll see it a little bit better in a second, sorry. So push the pen in, fold the flower kind of around the frame of the pen, and that's going to keep your flower looking fluffy instead of a flat mess. We don't want that. So again, do it with each layer using a small amount of glue and folding the layers around the pen as you see here. And with the very last layer, I will use the other side of the pen, the base of the pen. And the only reason I do that is because it's going to form kind of a flatter surface like you see there. And all that does is create like a little nook for your button or pearl or whatever adornment you want to put in the center. It'll give it a nice flat surface. And so I'm just going to show you again the gluing process. So again, just a little bit of glue, attach the layer and adhere the glue with a pen. And you can even make like the OK symbol with your fingers like I'm doing here and really push that flower in there. Again, it's just ensuring that the flower stays nice and fluffy. Okay, for this step, you are just going to add your adornment. So take your pearl, button, gem, anything that you want to put in the center. Add a little bit of hot glue and put that bad boy down. And you definitely want to make sure that your glue dries before you move on to the next flower. When I was making these flowers, I was, again, impatient and just trying to kind of kick out as many as I could. And I wasn't letting the button or pearls or any of the other things I was using, I wouldn't let them dry before I moved on. And as I would push my flowers off to the side, they would all kind of slide around. And by the time I was done with a bunch of flowers and I would go to look at the finished products, the centerpiece was off on a petal somewhere and it was a nightmare. So just remember, take your time, let the glue dry, at least more than I did, before you push it off to the side and move on to the next one, because it's very sad when you destroy your whole flower from hot glue. So okay, if you want to give your flower a stem, just take a little bit of floral wire and you're going to bend it around your index finger. And you want to wrap it around your index finger a few times, and this is just going to give it some more strength and stability. So once you do that, you want to bend it and make it at a 90-degree angle, and this is just going to give it a flat surface so it attaches nicely to the base of your flower. Next, you're just going to take your hot glue gun and place some hot glue on the wire and attach it to the base of your flower. And just make sure you hold it there long enough that it completely dries, otherwise it will come off. And the other great thing about this technique and attaching it to a wire is if you're going to put it in a floral arrangement or a bouquet or anything like that, the wire allows you to bend and manipulate the flower, and it just gives you so much more control over your arrangement as opposed to using real flowers. All right guys, so that is the end of the tutorial. So now I'm going to show you the flowers that I made for my wedding using this burning method. Now these flowers are from 2 years ago and they made the trek from San Francisco to Texas. So some of them are looking a little bit sad, but that's what's so great about fabric flowers is you can bring them back to life and even replace them with new ones. So anyway, with this flower here, I am just showing you kind of another option to spice up your flowers a little bit. Instead of just using the same fabric for all your flowers, if you kind of mix in with different fabrics like I did here, I slipped in some organza in between the layers. It gives your flower a little bit more personality and separates it from the rest. This black one here, I stuck some lace in between each layer. And I did the same thing with this white organza flower by sticking some lace in between. So here is the bouquet that I made for my wedding, and I wanted to make this a little bit more glamorous than the rest, so I took some brooches and I hot glued them to the fabric wire that you saw earlier, and I just placed them in between some of the flowers. And I also took some brooches and stuck them in the center of the flowers, again just to set it apart from the rest. Okay guys, I hope you found this video helpful, and I hope that it has left you feeling confident that this is something you could do on your own. If you do have any questions, please feel free to leave them in the comment section and I will get back to you. Or if you have any requests for future tutorials, you can let me know as well. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't already. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!